What's up guys? In this video we're going to be assembling the Little Guy Racing Parts Ripper chassis kit. This is a very comprehensive builder's kit from Little Guy Racing Parts. Comes with pretty much everything you need to assemble it. There are some things that you will need to provide yourself, and I will go over that list as we get going here. It comes with the kit itself, it comes with the cage, the tub, scale accents, fender liners, frame, skid plate, servo tray, links. It's got a ton of stuff to get you going on this awesome scale build. Keep in mind that my Ripper kit that I'm demonstrating this with has been custom painted. The kit that comes from Little Guy Racing Parts will be a raw gray 3D printed version. With that said, let's jump in and check it out. This is a very comprehensive kit. What you see here is what you get in the kit. So let's start from my left to the right here. So you do get billet high clearance links. You get the billet Emax servo tray set up for the 4-link. We're not going to be using this because I have actually got the Tremor servo that we're going to be putting in here. You get the frame, so you get a 3D printed frame, very strong, very light, super high quality here. We have our roof panel. We have our inner fender liners here. We have the interior. We have the hardware kit to build the rig itself, and also the accessory hardware. Everything very clearly labeled, has numbers, sizes, where they go. Excellent stuff here. We've got the battery tray and the ESC tray, chassis specific skid plate. We've got the grill. We have a winch and a fairlead and a radiator. Again, we have our panels here, our side panels with the fenders, the cargo tray. We've got rock sliders for both sides, windshield frame. It comes with Ripper specific drive shafts. The tub itself comes with the entire tub here. It comes with the hood as well. And finally comes with this awesome roll cage to fit everything in. So a very comprehensive kit, tons of stuff here, great quality for 150 bucks. Just awesome what you get here. So let's talk about what you need to complete this kit. So this gives you kind of the shell. You get the tub and the cage, the frame, but you are going to need a servo. You're going to need front and rear axles, complete axles with wheels and tires and suspension. You're going to need all of your electronics. You're going to need an ESC. You're going to need a motor, transmitter. While it does come with the drive shaft tubes themselves, you are going to need the U-joints and the male ends that go into these. So you're going to have to cannibalize some pieces from an SCX-24 to get this to work. You're going to need the rear linkage mount for the axle. And you're going to need a transmission too. And I believe that's it. So the list of components that you have to supply is fairly short, but they are some very critical components. So make sure that you've done your homework. You've got an SCX-24 that you can cannibalize for this, or that you've got the spare parts necessary to complete this kit. Now, I think what we should start doing is just dive into this and start assembling. Now I'm going to put you over my shoulder and we're going to do this together. It looks fairly intuitive to put together, so I hope it's going to be pretty straightforward, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to do it together, so let's jump in and check it out. One of the first things you're going to want to do when you get into your kit is you're going to want to build your linkage. Now, I have done most of these links here, but I'm going to show you how to build these with this last demonstration here. So the kit's going to come with your pivot hardware separate, so you'll get a pivot end for each end of the link. You need to put this together with these supplied O-rings. So let's do this one example together here. Now I always like to have the wide flange. You see there's the wide end and then there's a smaller end. I always like to have the wide end of the flange on the outside. So the Little Guy Racing Parts links has the logo on the outside. So now we know that's going to be the outside where we want the wide flange to go. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take one O-ring, I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to push it up flush with that wide flange. I'm going to drop it into my link here. Now I'm going to push that. I'm going to hold it, and then with my index finger, I'm going to push it out so that I can get a good protrusion of the pivot hardware on the other side. I'm going to need that to loop my second O-ring around. You can use tweezers or needle nose pliers if you need to. These O-rings are pretty easy to work with. I typically just slide them over, and just like that, we have one of them good to go right there. Now we're going to do this last one together again. Just slide it down. Just like that. There's one complete link. So it's a little tedious, but it's not difficult to do. So just take your time, make sure that you've got your flange in the right position. So now that we've got our linkage done, we can dive into the rest of the chassis here. Let's get into this. So to install this kit, you will need a 0.50 inch hex driver. You will definitely need some very small screwdrivers. Now I have a hobby tool set here that has a bunch of different bits in my driver here. The primary bit that you're going to need is a very small Phillips head screwdriver, and that's going to be for your coarse thread screws here that come with the kit. So there's no instructions with the kit or really online, so we're going to try to do this ourselves kind of by intuition. I kind of mocked it up myself initially, so I've got a fairly solid idea about how to put this together. So I'm going to start with the cage because a lot of it kind of hinges on the cage itself. So we're going to basically build it from the inside out is what we're going to do. So I have the cage here. Inside the cage, we have the dash. We have our seats. And we have this little cross member here. Now this is where your seats are going to attach, as is your center console right there. We look at our hardware kit. We can see the Ripper scale accessory hardware pack has the hardware that we need to attach these components inside the cage. So we're going to use these tiny little coarse thread screws to put this together. We're going to do this now. So with our center console attached, next we're going to put this little crossbar on here. Now this bolts up in two different places, three actually. On each side it attaches to the inside of the cage here, and then to the center console. So in hindsight, what I should have done was attach the seats to this crossbar first, and then bolted it up, because it's going to be a tight squeeze to get at that screw right there for the outside mounting position on the seat, but I think I can get there. So I was able to get it. It was a tight squeeze, like I said, but we got one seat in there. Now we're just going to repeat on the other side. So there we have the dash and the seats for our cage. It's looking pretty good. Next, I'm going to drop the cage into the tub here. Fitment is excellent. Look at that already. Looking fantastic. It's like we have 6 mounting positions for this cage. It mounts at the bottom, so you got one in each corner in the back, and then on the bottom we have 4 in each corners of the bottom of the tub here. So next we're going to switch to the bigger hardware. I'm going to grab our driver. We're going to start using these bigger pieces. So we want the 4mm to attach the cage to the tub. I was initially coming in from the bottom, but that was not correct, I don't think. So I'm screwing these in from the top down. That's how I'm doing the cage in the back here. All right, so there's that in the back. Now we'll flip it over and do the 4 corners here. Okay, so we are secured to the tub. Looking fantastic. I love it already. Also do the cargo rack. Attach this to the tub here as well. Now the cargo rack uses the small screws from underneath. So I think what I might have to do is kind of punch through the carpet here. This might be a bit of a challenge. Let's see if we can get it to work. This has a 3D printed logo, the Lgrp. I'm gonna have that facing out here. We did. Awesome. So the cargo rack's installed. Looking good. So next, continue to expand out. I'm going to do my windshield frame here. Now this has posts on the bottom that slot into the tub here. And then it looks like there's screws at the top to screw this down. It's like we have two here as well, one on each upper corner. Do these here. Again, having to give this just a little bit of a pinch to get these lined up. Everything else is lined up exceptionally well, but with a little bit of encouragement, it lines up easily. Got that bolted up. Next, I'm going to start doing the fenders here because I need the front fenders to attach the hood and the rest of the tub. So I'm going to do the back fenders first. Now how these work, this circular cutout here goes around the tail light. Like this, you press it on, and then the screws should line up after that. Now for the fenders, again, we continue to use the small coarse thread screws. This is one side, and we'll do the rest on the other side. Rear fender's on, looking good. It's starting to come together now. This kit feels really solid. Loving this. It's going to be so cool. I love the back end. Great detail on this kit. All right, move on to the front now. Front, again, also uses these coarse thread screws. There's going to be a lot of these coarse thread screws, so be prepared. Okay, now we've got front fenders installed. Now we've got this opening here we're going to fill with the front grille. So our grille piece here, we have two screws on either side. It's going to screw in right there. It's going to be nice and gentle putting this together. Look at that. While I'm in here, I'm going to put the scale radiator in here because I believe it attaches right on the top of this grill here. So here's our little tiny radiator. I'm going to pop that in. Get that radiators in there. Looking good. So the hood piece here doesn't have any screws attached to it. How this works is that it slides in like this and has a clip where it just kind of sits on top here so that you can open this up. There we go. You can open this up and your battery and your electronics should be under the hood, but that kind of gives you a sense of what this is all going to look like. The roof, we can probably put the roof on here too, so it comes with the roof panel right here. Continuing with our coarse thread screws, we're going to just pop the roof on. Okay, this is our roof. What do you guys think of the roof? Let me know in the comments what do you think of the roof. If we should leave that on or take it off. I was almost digging it without the roof, but we'll see what you guys think. It comes with these almost boat skid like rock sliders. We can put these on. So now these fit right on the chassis here. They slot in behind the fenders. So your external fenders here are going to come down, and where that fender is elevated from the body a little bit, that's where your rock sliders are going to slide in. So they slot into place there like a puzzle piece, both front and rear, it looks like. And then they screw in from the bottom and also on the sides. So again, using the coarse threads here. So there's 4 screws on the bottom, 2 on each side, and then we've got 2 in the corners as well on the tub itself. Right, rock sliders on there. Perfect. Looking good. All right, moving into some of the more technical pieces here. We're going to put the inner fender liners in, and the battery tray and ESC tray. So what we're going to do is put the inner fender liners in first. We're just going to rest them in the chassis first. It's important to get this over the fenders, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so they're just sitting in there now. We're going to put this over the top, if we can get it in here without knocking those things off. It should fit right over those like a puzzle piece. See that? It sits right on top of them. And then we're going to screw it in. It has 4 screws with those small coarse thread screws. We're going to bolt this up now. Okay, look at that. So we should be able to fit our electronics in there, hopefully. It's a pretty small spot. I'm trying to brainstorm how we're going to do this. I think there's definitely adequate room for a battery right there. Or if you had a really small battery, possibly up front. But in any case, this is where our electronics are going to go. So you're going to have your battery right up front for some good weight distribution here. Now we're at the point where we're going to put the chassis in. Now this is pretty impressive. You're going to like this. So easy to put together. So it doesn't slot in or slide in anywhere. It just pops right on here. Just like that. Fits so perfect on this chassis. Look at that. Everything lines up really, really well. So now we're going to start using some of our bigger hardware to attach the tub to the chassis here. So we have the 4 screws on the bottom. There's a couple in the back here. So we should be good. Now there are a couple screws up here to attach the chassis to the grill, but I'm assuming that these are going to use the little coarse threads, because these are, I don't want to put the big hardware in that small 3D printed grill. So I'm going to try the coarse thread here. That's exactly right. This is also where we're going to anchor down the inner fender liners so they attach to the chassis. There's a little tab in behind here. We're going to screw those in, again, using the coarse threads. And there we have the tub on the frame, pretty much ready to go for the linkage, skid plate, and start bolting up the axles and the driveline components. This is getting very exciting now. One thing I am going to do, I'm going to put my winch and my fair lead on the front, just kind of close out the tub and the accessories. How cool is that little winch? I love it. It's so awesome. So again, just using the coarse threads, it bolts directly to the chassis. Next we have our little fair lead. We're just going to attach this to the front of the winch. Right there, it kind of closes out our front end. The fair lead, the orange fair lead kind of looks like lips on there. I'm thinking, what do you guys think of that too? Oh, I don't know, that we might have to repaint that. It's with that kind of the eyes from the headlights. It looks like a, almost duck face it's got going on here. So we'll see about that. I like the contrast, and I think you see a lot of people paint the Fairlead a different color, but for some reason that just jumps out at me. It's odd looking. But let's continue. There it is with the hood on. Kind of gives you a sense of what this whole thing is going to look like. I think it's gorgeous. I love the colors and the detail. This thing is just fantastic. The flake in the back, oh my gosh, this thing is so cool. Okay, my friends, we are approaching the end of phase 1, which is the full rolling chassis. We have got the tub situated to the frame, the interior, all the accessories, everything is pretty much built out. Now we are ready to assemble kind of the rolling drivetrain aspect of this. We're going to do linkage, axles, suspension, servo. We'll do part of the drive shafts. So we'll do pretty much everything except the motor, transmission, and we'll put the skid plate in because I think I need it for linkage and things like that. So we're going to mock this thing up. We just won't have the transmission, motor, and electronics in it. But this is pretty exciting. We're getting down to the wire here. So now let's get into the final components of the rolling chassis here. So this kit is built specifically around the Super 8 axles that Little Guy Racing Parts offers. So that's what we're using in this build. I've got the billet Super 8 axles front and back. I've already built them. I've got the brass diff covers front and back. Brass knuckles up front so I can bias that weight up towards the front. For the servo, I'm also running the brand new Little Guy Racing Parts Tremor servo on here with their 3D printed mount. This thing mounted up perfectly on here, fits excellent. So this is going to be a great combo, I feel. So I've already pre-built these. They're ready to bolt up for the most part. One thing that I did too is that I put underdrive gears in the rear. So if you've watched my other builds, you know I'm a big proponent of doing the overdrive gears in the front, which makes the front spin faster, which slightly improves your turning radius and improves your climbing ability. But underdriving the rear, which is making the rear turn slower, produces the same effect. So we're going to try just a different approach with the underdrive gears in the rear, leaving the stock gears in the front. So that's what we got here. For suspension, I'm running the Little Guy Racing Parts long travel shocks. These are the 54mm shocks, the double barrel style. I'm going to take the springs out of these because I like that low stance. So when I get these out of the package, I'm just going to break them down. I'm going to take the springs completely off because that's how I like to run my builds. So that's what I'm going to do. Right now, as I get ready for this, I'm just going to break these things apart and get them ready for install. See, these are nice shocks, but they're just a little stiff and they are too long. And here's the soft spring that comes with them right here. But even that, it's too long and it's too stiff for what I'm after. So let's take these things apart, take the springs off, and then we'll be ready to start assembling. Okay, now that we've stripped the shocks of their springs, they're ready to go. So what I'm going to start doing now, I'm going to start attaching the linkage to our skid plate and our axles here. Shorter links are going to go up front. The front and rear lower links are very close, so be very mindful about which links that you use. Make sure you size them up. These things are very, very similar. So there's only maybe 2 or 3 millimeters, maybe a little bit more, 3 or 4 millimeters separating the length. So we want the longer ones in the back. So we want the straight links for the uppers are going to be on the top sections here. The bent links for our lowers are going to be on the bottom of the skid. When you install these lower links, you want the elbow to be towards the back. So you want the longer, flatter section to be closest to the skid plate. And then we want the bend closest to the axles. Okay, this will be our linkage all installed. Now I'm going to bolt this up to the axles here, start getting ready. This is where you're going to start getting into some stock components here. So remember, you need to have your rear linkage mount, your rear upper linkage mount from a stock SCX24 or an aftermarket part that fits this need. But we need to have this on here to finish this. So this goes right on top of your axle in the back. It's important to note too, I don't believe the kit comes with the hardware to attach the linkage to the axle. Since the axles are separate, this is kind of where the hardware kit ends, and you're going to be responsible for the hardware to attach these to your axles too. So make sure you've got extra hardware to do this next step. This would be a good plug for a hardware kit. If you don't have one, you can pick up one of these hardware kits from Little Guy Racing Parts, or there are a bunch of them online. But this is a great way to have your hardware around that you need to complete these builds. So let's see, should be good. So now when you assemble these to your axles, your upper links are going to go to the inside. So you're going to try to pinch them here, and they're going to attach to your upper links like that. Now we're going to move on to the lower links. These are going to fit right in down here on the axle. For the front, we're going to attach, the upper links are going to attach to the back of the servo mount here. This tray is set up to accept a 4-link linkage setup, just like what we've got in the rear, but you're going to just bolt them up to the outside of your servo tray. And the lower links, just like in the rear, I'm going to just attach right in here in the front. There is kind of the underpinnings of this chassis right here. So next, let's get this thing into the frame, and then we're going to attach the suspension, and then we'll have our rolling chassis here. So we're getting really close to the end here. This is getting really exciting. I believe this just drops in. So I need to back up here. The front upper links actually go through the frame. So we're going to back out our front upper links here. Okay, now with our skid plate in here, you can see it's super flat across the bottom. I'm going to bolt in our skid plate, and then I'm going to attach our linkage. 3 on each side. Skid attached, now we can go back in and do our upper links. So let's see if we can thread these in here. There we go. Now we are hooked up. There's a servo. Should be plenty of room to tuck up in there. But that's pretty much it. Now we're ready for suspension. So I'm going to hook my suspension up here. Then we'll do wheels and tires, and then it'll be phase 1 done. So a bunch of spots to choose from for shock towers. Since I'm running nose springs, I'm going to run these pretty low on the chassis so I can get a lot of axle drop. But you can experiment with the options that you have in here for your shock placements. Try out what works best for you, for your build and your preference. I'm going to run this and see how it works. You can always change it very easily. Super easy to access these if you want to change it on the fly. I love that the shocks, they thread right into the frame itself, so there's no nuts on the other side or anything. Really easy to work with. Same thing with the rear. I'm going to angle these to the front and put on the lower mount, just because that's how I typically mount my shocks. Okay, so we pretty much have a full rolling chassis here. Now let's put some wheels and tires on it. So that's going to wrap it up for the Ripper kit. This assembled a full rolling chassis. Now the next step in this build would be to put a motor, transmission, and the electronics in it. Now keep in mind that this is set up to accept a brushed motor in either 50 sized or 30 sized, very easy. It's a simple bolt-in, no issues. If you wanted to take this to a brushless setup, there would most likely be some additional chassis modifications needed, as it's not really set up for a brushless combination right out of the box. So if you do want to take it to that level, just bear in mind that there will likely be some additional customization above and beyond what the chassis is already set up for. I hope this video helped you out. Hope you can come back to this as a resource as you're working on your Ripper. It's a fun kit, and I hope you enjoy your build.